everybody. My name is Lejla Mamut, as already introduced. I will not be talking about my organization and its work, and I have some brochures for you for those who want to know more. Or you can ask whatever you are interested in. So I work in Bosnia, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I think that there are very valuable, both positive and negative lessons that can be learned from Bosnia, but in any case, lessons that can maybe help other societies. So that's why I'm glad to be here today. I wish to address two questions which you raised. First is how to recognize the suffering, or how to acknowledge, even if you want, the suffering of women and men who have survived rape and sexual violence.
And
the other,
interrupt just for a second.
Yes?
Analistë tjera, a keni nevojë për përkthim gjatë? E kuptoni?
For translation, it's okay?
Just making sure. Për publikut, a kemi njerëz të cilët nuk e kuptojnë gjuhën angleze apo? Okay, rregull. Please continue, sorry.
That's okay. And the second question, of course, which we are all asking ourselves is how can society be of any help, and what concretely can we do, especially if we work for NGOs to help push for some of the issues which are not moving forward in our both countries, I can say. When it comes to the first question, from my experience in working on the field, justice is a need that women and men who have survived this crime have in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But they interpret it in a different way. So for some people, for some women, they say, you know, justice for me is if I have some kind of monthly payment and I can live more or less a dignified life. Or if I have free school books for my children so they can be, you know, educated, that is for me justice. Or if I have health insurance and similar. For other individuals who have managed to overcome their trauma, have some kind of financial stability, are at a certain level where they can face even the perpetrator, they say, I want criminal justice. I want to see him in court, I want him to be sentenced even for a year, but that for me will be a satisfaction. I will have my acknowledgement, my recognition of what happened to me. When it comes to the first type of need for women and men to be acknowledged, what happened in Bosnia was really an example that can be inspiring, let's say. Until 2006, so many years after the war, women and men who survived this crime were not recognized in the legislation for compensation and other rights as a special category. They were recognized generally in the group of civilian victims of war, and they had to prove that they have bodily harm, so physical harm, in order to get some kind of compensation, which meant that if you were raped, sexually harassed, and you have no physical evidence of that, but you suffer gravely, mentally, psychologically, and otherwise, you are not entitled to anything. Then in 2006, a very interesting thing happened. There was a movie made by a local artist, Jasmila Žbanić, and this movie was about rape, about even a child that was born after a rape from the war. And this film kind of triggered women's groups, human rights organizations, and they said, you know, we want to use this film, we want to see if there can be any change made in order to help at least a little these women and men who have survived it. And luckily, they managed to do something, namely, in one part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, they managed to bring about the change of the law to make survivors of these crimes a special category, so they didn't have to prove that they had bodily harm. And the procedure to get this monthly compensation, which was, let's say, much easier. So this was huge success of civil society, and today, I mean, a lot of women and men still benefit from that. On the other side, in the Republika Srpska, in the other entity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's the same situation. So victims, again, have to prove that they have 60% bodily harm. So there is discrimination within Bosnia and Herzegovina on the basis of where you live. So if you live there, you don't get anything. If you live here, you are acknowledged. If you live abroad and you are Bosnian or you have suffered within the country, again, you are excluded from all rights. So I'm trying to say it's not perfect. Other rights are not guaranteed, like rehabilitation, restitution, preferential treatment in employment, education, all the special measures that exist and can exist. But at least some form of justice in this social economic sense has been delivered to survivors, at least in one entity. Now we are fighting for a state law that would encompass all survivors on the entire territory, and we'll see how it goes. But civil society is really in Bosnia a driving force in this. And I can see also in Kosovo, I mean through Medica and some other NGOs, that they are basically the only ones, along with international agencies, that are having some kind of initiative, and now maybe the government is starting to move in the same direction, which is very good. In Bosnia, it's not the case. So there is still no support from the side of the government for this issue. The other issue that I wanted to speak about in terms of acknowledgement is this fighting impunity or the pursuit of criminal justice. What I want to say there is that I believe that there are at least 5 preconditions, or 5, if you want to call them, obligations that the state has in order to deliver justice for crimes against humanity, including sexual violence and rape from war. One is that the criminal legislation, the laws that are within the country, are in accordance with international standards. So people who are criminals, who have committed rape and sexual violence, must get sentences that are adequate to the severity of the crime. We are talking about a crime against humanity. We cannot go further except saying genocide, but rape can also be considered genocide, as we know. So the sentences must be adequate to this crime, to the severity of the crime. Bosnia and Herzegovina there is also a good example because it's the only country in the region, and maybe Kosovo, the situation in Kosovo is also the same, I hope. But it's the only country, let's say, among Serbia and Croatia that has brought a law in 2003 which gives really high sentences for war crimes. Before that, there was the old law of Yugoslavia, which gave maybe 4 times lower sentences than this new law. So in this regard, there was a step made forward, and really you are in a bad situation if you are tried in Bosnia, because you really can get a high sentence. The second thing is that people who work in judicial institutions, prosecutors, judges, they must go through a process of checkup or vetting. I don't know, we call it vetting, right? We cannot have people who are associated with the crimes from the past working as judges and prosecutors. Then of course, the public and victims who are potential witnesses will not have trust, confidence to step forward, to testify and to pursue criminal justice. And then we will have the same thing happening to us again, because we will not fight against what was done in the past. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, there were a lot of international judges in the state court that gave a lot of contribution, not only to developing different working and methods and ethics, but also in fighting the political pressures that exist from these different sides on the court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the different ethnically based challenges as well. The third thing I want to mention is witness protection. I think I'm gonna do, okay. Witness protection, so obviously witnesses who want to be protected must be given this measure. They cannot be exposed to their identity being revealed. They cannot be exposed to threats, otherwise people will be less and less willing to testify afterwards. Witness support is along the same line. My colleague spoke about that, the psychological support, but I would also say legal support. People who are acting as witnesses before court, they have to understand what are their rights, what are the